Welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast, sponsored by the Draft Professors. Tonight, joined by Draft Professors Owen and Newt, and we're going to be going through their last group of 8 defensive linemen before there is a big board reveal next week for the same defensive linemen. But before we get going, Newt, how are you feeling about scouting reports? You know, at this point, what we've podcasted, I think, for 8 straight weeks. How are you feeling about the way the podcasts have gone this year and the group of players that you've watched?
I still say that I think while this group does not have the firepower up top, I think that it's got a lot of depth to it, where I'm talking about more guys in early day 3 than we had an opportunity to talk about last year, especially with the defensive lineman group, where we had a ton of excitement around probably those top 10 guys. But in my opinion, we had a pretty big gap and a lot of discrepancy. I think this group does have some good meat to it, no pun intended, in order to kind of fill out throughout the entire challenge. And I think even when you talk about guys like Peter Woods, you're still going to get some of that beef up top. You're just not going to have, man, what did we have? 5 defensive tackles go in the first round last year?
4? I think it was six. And then a couple more went early round 2.
And obviously we're not going to get that. Grant, Nolan, Graham,
Tyleik Williams,
Derek
Harmon,
your boy, and then there was one more.
Yeah, that was why I said 6, because I can always remember the 5, and I think there was one other, and then TJ Sanders went early round 2.
Darius Alexander was in that top 100 mix.
Yeah.
Albert Collins. So it's like you had these guys that the top 10 was phenomenal. But I stand by what I said. I think that there was a pretty big gap, and I think this group is a little bit rounder, and a little bit fuller in the midsection. So I'm kind of excited about that. See where these guys take us, but. No, it's a fun group. I'm really excited about the defensive tackles we get to talk about today for sure.
Yeah. So, Owen, what did you think specifically about the group that we were covering today? Was this your first look at most of the 8?
Yeah, especially the edges. There were 2 or 3 of the tackles I have watched previously. But most of the players that we're going to cover today, I got my first looks in preparation for this podcast. But also, it was 5 D tackles in the first round. We named the 5 guys.
Okay.
So I was going crazy. I was trying to figure out who that 6th one was, and it was Albert Collins was like 34, I think, so he was pretty close to it. But yeah, those were the 5. But this group specifically didn't get a lot of eyes on them in the preseason summer scouting process. Know a couple of names. Through Newt doing his videos, so I recognize them. But I think the only ones I watched were McDonald, Banks, and that'd be it, actually, to be honest with you. McDonald and Banks are the only 2 players I had seen previously before going into this group.
Those are the only 2 players you need to see. I mean, that's where the fun of the group's going to sit, in my opinion.
I'm going to be honest with you. I wasn't, when I watched them, so for summer scouting, I watched summer scouting for McDonald. And I had 2 games and plus the Texas game. So I wasn't super high on him because he just didn't have a ton of reps.
That's the problem with him.
Yeah, we'll get more into that once we get towards his positioning. But Banks, I watched a good bit of him. I think he was one of the players I watched live. I was not a big fan when I first watched him coming into this season. So that we'll see how those change or if I'm still the same on them. But that was kind of my impressions with Banks. I had like a 4 on Banks and like a 4 on McDonald.
Yeah, I'll little spoiler, but I was lower on both of them in summer scouting than I am currently. I think especially Caden McDonald. I don't think, I struggle with it myself, but it's so tough to get eyes on a position when you're talking about a defensive tackle that is a run stuffing dude and get a good feeling for how they're going to be when they're put in a prominent role, when they're just taking rotational snaps and not necessarily asked to do the things that they're going to be best at. So definitely something I want to reflect on for my process. But Caden McDonald, man, I'm excited to talk about him because he was definitely a riser from summer to now for me.
Okay. Well, the players we're going to talk about today are Anthony Smith from Minnesota, Tatum Tuioti from Oregon, Mateo Ugalele from Oregon. Those three players are edges. Then we're going to close out with 5 defensive tackles. Tim Keenan from Alabama, Zane Durant from Penn State, Xavier Harris from Ole Miss, Caden McDonald from Ohio State, and then Caleb Banks from Florida. And I know that after last week's podcast, we briefly talked about Anthony Smith backstage. Owen, I'm going to let you kick off Anthony Smith from Minnesota. What did you see and what did you like?
Yeah, so just to peek behind the curtain, last week behind backstage, we watched a single rep from Anthony Smith, which was him flat backing Henry Tabanzi from UB in their week 1 matchup. So I got excited, and I'm going to say that a lot of what I liked about him was what we saw in that clip, where he has a ton of length. He can power through a dude's chest because he just has longer arms than you, and he's 285 and can convert some of that twitch and speed he does have to power and win pass rush reps that way. I think he has like 11 sacks on the season, something like 12 sacks, something crazy where he's in the double digits. And that was something that really popped out to me. And overall, I think that still does hold true when you go and compare him against, like, I watched him against Northwestern to see how he did against Tiernan, especially with that arm length discrepancy. Yep. I also watched him in the game against Iowa, again, going against Dunker, another guy that's kind of lacking in length, giving him the best opportunity to go against some top-tier players, in my opinion, at tackle or on the offensive line in general, but still having kind of that advantage to kind of see how best he takes advantage of that length. And I think he does do that, but it's super inconsistent, especially as a pass rusher, where like that's his one trick, and even that one trick doesn't work all that much. Like he doesn't have the speed to make these tackles really respect him going to the outside hip to then open up the speed to power. He needs to add that element to his game. When he doesn't absolutely bull rush the guy backwards, then there's a second move isn't really coming, and there's no real counters off of that. So as a pass rusher, he's dominant in one way, but for a lot of those reps, they're either cleanup sacks or he was, again, winning that with that long arm speed to power when they would allow him to get that. But I was really excited to see how he was as a run defender, and I'm curious to see if this is where you land new with him, but I'm a bit lower on him from run defense specifically, where you're thinking big body, ton of length, has some flashes of twitch and movement, but I wouldn't say is like super elite. I think he isn't super dominant, despite the fact that he has all those things going for him. He lacks elite level explosiveness or even high level explosiveness and lateral ability to chase plays. What I was surprised to see was that he just didn't use his hands a ton or utilize that length as a point of attack defender to stretch out blocks, especially when they're trying to hit the edge and bounce outside of him, where he can't really run, string it out, and then get off to make a tackle. So I wanted him to set harder edges and utilize those hands more effectively, especially with the frame he has, but he just struggled to do so. And I think that really left me with a bad taste in my mouth, where it's like, okay, he's going to be like a rotational guy whose best trait is his one pass rush move right now, but like he has great size, he has NFL level athleticism. It's going to be whether or not you can pull more out of him and really refine his skill set to impact one way or the other from the run defense or pass rush, which I don't really think he has a high floor at either at the moment coming into the NFL.
No, I'm going to agree with you on almost all of that. The one thing that I'm a little bit lower on, I didn't think the athleticism was anything that stood out. I think it's NFL athleticism from the standpoint that he's going to hit whatever threshold they need, but it's not going to be anything that goes beyond that. I think he hit the nail on the head with the speed, and that's going to be something where he's a powerful player and he plays his game that way. He's going to play wild. He's going to play where he's going to go through you, and he's going to use that work rate and that instinct to just get after the ball with everything that he's got. The problem is everything he's got is nothing that's special. The athleticism's low. Owen, you said it really well, where there's inconsistencies in both run and pass. And it's just so frustrating when you look at his size. And I have the exact same thing. My last 2 points in his weaknesses are what I just said, struggles to be consistent. Struggles to consistently make an impact in both run and pass, and struggles to be effective in run defense, especially given his size. Man, 6'6", 285. You should be playing like a 4-3 defensive end, old school. You're going to punch the running back in the mouth if they come anywhere near you, and he just does not play that way. He gets wiped out of plays, and he doesn't give the edge that you want from that line like you'd be expecting. Now, when he flashes, he is fun because that motor is hot and he's going to get after it. I watched the Nebraska game because he had 3 sacks in there. And they were fun sacks, but to put a little caveat on that, Dylan Raiola was sacked 9 times in total. So that was the Minnesota defense feasting rather than Anthony Smith just having a coming out party. Obviously, he got in on that, and you want to see him be a part of that production. But when you kind of put that into context, that a quarter of his sacks came in a game where Raiola just doesn't understand pocket presence, it helps to kind of put a little bit of a scope on that. And then beyond that, I take a look at the pressures that he's got. He does a really good job of converting sacks to pressures, but he had so many pressures in that game. That's kind of answering the question of like, hey, when you get in a situation where your length should be more advantageous, why aren't you showing up? So I love the build. I love the body. He is no Cleve Lubin, that's for sure. But it's something where I look at him and I just am consistently frustrated given his build that he's not able to do more. And I think it just comes down to lack of speed, lack of athleticism, lack of really any finesse and speed rush to his game. So I landed, and I talked with Jim about this pre-show, like dead middle of day 3 with him. I think he's a rotational guy. I think he hit the nail on the head in terms of what his NFL career looks like. I think someone's going to take a swing on him because 6'6", 285, and he had good production in terms of, sacks he was able to put on the board. I think he was first team all the Big Ten too. So like those things he's got going for him, it's going to get him a draft ticket. I just don't know what his future looks like from there.
Yeah, I had him towards the lower end of day 3 just because he's not setting high floor with run defense or pass rushing. Right. He has some flashes of some really high highs, but like it's so few and far between. Like the 12 sacks on film are like the 12 of those like maybe 20 highlight plays he has of the season, whereas there's so many other plays where he's just totally a non-factor or gets washed out and is an active negative. So he doesn't really have a high floor. I don't see a ton of high ceiling because he just lacks athletic edge. So he's going to get drafted because he plays edge and he has that size. I could see a team that values that and thinks that maybe if we coach him up a bit more with how to utilize that, we can get a rotational player out of it. But it's not somebody I'm pounding the table to invest in. I'd rather go with more high upside pick that late, much later than maybe a guy like Anthony Smith.
Yeah, no, I agree. I will say, Ryan, I have Cleve Lubin ranked ahead of Anthony Smith. So fear not. I know he let you down earlier this week. Hopefully that'll bring some peace to you.
Okay, the next edge, and I remembered seeing a little bit of this in our group chat ahead of the podcast, but it's Tatum Tuioti from Oregon. We're covering his teammate next. There was a debate as to which of the two is the better prospect in our private chat, but Newt, what did you have on Tuioti?
I hate that I'm starting with him because I'm the one that is lower on Tuioti, just from the conversation that we had, in our group chat. So Tuioti, when I look at him, he's another player that he plays with a hot motor. And you can see it with the way that he carries himself and the way that he approaches the game. He approaches the game like, I love to see. I think that translates in some solid run defense. One of the things about his game that he's really able to stand out in, he's got a low tackle rate. He's got a solid run defense grade and production and run defense from a hard edge that's set. And I think that's just because he's willing to work harder than the guy across the line from him. And that's something that, it does go a long way with me. But when I take a look at him in terms of an NFL prospect, he to me he's not enough of an athlete to be an NFL prospect. And that's where I struggle with him. I think that he's stiff and I don't love his ability to get downfield, to make those shared area cuts and to be a consistent threat to high level offensive tackles. I think he plays with really poor leverage, even given the fact that he's 6'3". It just seems like he's that stiffness also translates to some inability to be flexible and get down and low. It's something where I see a body type that is okay, but it's nothing special. I see an athlete that's underwhelming for me. And it's a guy that I think, man, he's able to make an impact in college because number one, Oregon's defensive line feasts. Like we've talked about two players already, and we're about to talk about another player along the defensive front that absolutely wreak havoc. And so I think he's a little bit of a benefactor from that. But also the fact that he is a hard worker and he does phenomenal in run defense. And, to the point that Owen's about to make based on our conversation with Anthony Smith, he's going to have probably a higher floor, truth be told, than Anthony Smith because he's going to be a high floor run defending edge. I just think that some of that comes from his work rate, and I wonder how well that translates. And then the second thing is I really don't see how he's going to be any form of a pass rush presence in the NFL.
I mean, what you said isn't wrong, Newton. You kind of beat me to the punch of where I was going to find his value in this conversation, where
it's like we've podcasted together for over a year now.
Yeah, right. He's 6'3", 263, and while I don't think I literally have it written in here. He doesn't have elite athleticism, where as I put in here, elite athleticism. There are plays where he just kind of pops every so often, especially with some of his first step stuff, where you consistently down and down, it's not there to the point where you like to have it. But there are plays where he's able to shoot cross face, and it's tapped into eventually. I do think he's stiff. I do like his athleticism in one frame or in one sense where it's going to be him as a chase down player, being able to move laterally despite being 260 plus, especially from like the backside. Where I do like him a lot, and kind of like what you mentioned, is that despite not having a ton of length or like the most powerful frame, he is a hard-working run defender, can set the point of attack on the edge when he's challenged with being the read option player, being right off of that, or if he's asked to be, or if they like try to do some trickery or make him be wrong, he oftentimes is the one in the right position when being a run defender. Now, the lack of length, power, movement, ability, he's not going to be an elite run defender anyway, but I do think he is someone that can come in, be a rotational piece as like an early down player, or like if he's your edge 4 or 5 on a roster, if you carry that many, and I think he could be a player that works exclusively maybe in an even front, but I could also see if he drops a little bit of weight because he has that ability to move laterally, could potentially be a 3-4 outside backer if like they like that more rolled up run defending presence as like their mugging player, as opposed to like the weaker side player that's going to be your more movement and space run defender. So I think he brings some versatility. He definitely has a higher floor as a pass rusher. All of his wins this year were from just effort, cleanup, being a benefactor of being around those other guys. But I mean, if you're going to have a dude whose calling card is high motor, make the dirty plays, be sound technically and intelligently, and then all of a sudden he tosses in like 2-3 sacks a season just from pure effort when he gets stuck out there on a third down when you don't really like him to be out there. That's an NFL level player that I would draft and invest a pick in, especially if I am just looking for good solid depth in the third round in day 3. Now I'm doing the U.
It's progressed to you.
You guys have spent too much time together. You're beginning to think alike.
Yeah, no, and I think honestly, I think the conversation just comes up in what do we value in terms of that day 3. I'm willing to take a swing and a miss on a guy higher than get a safe player, and I think Owen is like, hey, who can I get to plug in as a pretty firm 4th defensive end, 5th defensive end, and then when can we take our swings maybe a little bit later? I don't know if that's fair to say, Owen, but I like you said, it sounds like we see him the same. I think that the mental processing, I think the effort, all of that is there. I just think he's like decent floor, but the floor is here, the ceiling's right about here for me. It's almost like what you see is what you get.
Well,
that's just kind of
how wide are your fingers? Like, how much room is there between those 2 fingers?
I mean, you might be able to slip a dollar bill between them, but it'd be tough.
Okay. His teammate is Mateo Ugalele, 6'5", 272. In the summer, you may have seen Mateo go in round 1 of some mocks. I know from reading the group chat between the 3 of us, he's not in round 1 anymore. Owen, where did he end up?
So just to be clear, and I think I just solved that with the Google real this is DJ Uiagalelei's brother, right?
Yep. Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Definitely a better football player. I'll say that. I wasn't.
Why is DJ Uiagalelei catching strays on this podcast?
When is he not catching strays after what he did last college season he played in? I mean, I'm just saying he was. Him at Oregon State was really annoying because Oregon State was a thorn in Washington's side that year. They went to the college football championship. I thought we were going to lose to them, and it was.
Is DJ playing tight end somewhere in the league right now, or is he like? I mean, like, once again, this is probably not necessarily the time to talk about this, but you did bring up DJ, and
he's a quarterback for the Chargers right now on the practice squad.
Okay, so he hasn't made the Florida conversion to tight end like all of the other Florida quarterbacks have done, and DJ Lagway will do eventually.
No, apparently not yet, at least.
All right, that's fair.
But going back to Mateo, yeah, this is a guy that when I did my first round mock draft with Bill Sparks over the summer, he was in that first round with some of the guys that have continued to be in first round mock drafts, but I haven't really heard much about him since. So that was the only thing I knew about him was that he was DJ U's brother and that he was a summer first round type player. So I went into this expecting something a little bit more than what I did get. So he ended up being, for me, just to start with the grade, not in the same bucket, but in a similar bucket as I have with his teammate, where they're like around 4 or 5 guys, where Mateo is definitely the opposite of what we were talking about, where you're getting a guy who's more impressive athletically, especially because he's like 270 plus as opposed to 260 plus. He has power, but all of it comes together with that he doesn't really have a ton of technical refinement. Like, he has power, he has athleticism, he has size, he has sack production this year. But all of that comes at because despite the fact that he doesn't really have a great move set to win consistently as an edge rusher. Don't love a lot of what he does when it comes to like the speed rush, despite him having good like burst and good ability to move. Yep. I don't think he really transitions that to the speed rush as well. But he does have other ways to win, especially with the power. So if you can unlock that a bit more, I do think that could be a good benefit for him. He's a guy that, I think he's a 3-year junior. If my numbers are correct. I definitely would have him be someone that goes back to school just to solidify that and get better technically while still improving on the different elements that he can weaponize in athleticism while still being at that size.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's the conversation where we're talking about a guy where you're trying to take that swing because of the traits versus a guy where you've seen him put it together and you feel comfortable about him with a day 2. Hell, even day 1 pick, because Mateo's traits, the way he's built, all of those things, they're there. He moves really, really well. He can play the position at a high level, and he has shown it in very short spurts. You take a look at last year's film, and you see kind of like what can be, and I think that's what gets him really with all that hype built around him. I was higher on him. I was not as high as first round on him, but I was definitely higher on him when you take a look at where I had him over the summer. The problem is he just didn't take that step forward. Like Owen said, he didn't do the things where he needed to start to refine his game, where he started to build in a power profile. And at 6'5", 272, if you're not able to convert speed to power, if you're not able to put a bull rush in there and at least start to play with some sense of a physical presence, I start to have concerns, because at that point, your frame, while it's built really well, it's not doing the thing that I want it to do. And on top of that, I really don't think he's all that great of a run defender. I think he's like capable, but he really hasn't shown the ability to put it together consistently, where in the NFL, I feel comfortable about him at any point on an early down. So it's a guy that's got all those raw tools. He's got them there. It kind of feels like a Daryl Jackson Jr. of last year, where it's like, hey, these things are here. You're built well. You have the athleticism. You need to just put it together. Now, dear Lord, we don't want him to be, once again, the pretty girl in high school that comes from the backtracks, Jackson Jr. as. I'd love to see him go back to school, but really get to a point where he figures out that technical aspect and winning off more than that initial burst, that athleticism. Hey, can you put together actually a pass rush plan? Can you be a presence on run defense? Because I think if you can do that, we're talking about a guy that's worthy of a top 50 pick. But right now, I've got him as a day 3 pick, and like not even one where it's like, maybe around that 100. He's like pretty firmly in day 3 for me right now.
From between the two of them, because they're both 3-year juniors, I think I would actively tell Mateo to go back to school, to weaponize that. But also, I would actively tell Tuioti to come out right now, because I don't think he has much more room to grow, and just to start getting a jump on his NFL career and improving some of the stuff that he's already kind of strong at. Whereas Mateo, I think, would benefit from going back, and he could definitely jump up more because, like I think one comment was saying, he's got great physical traits, but it's not all put together right now. Give me another year in college at a top-tier program like Oregon to try to put more of that together and piece it together.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. I would hate to see a guy like Tuioti come out in his junior year and then get drafted somewhere, between picks like 170 and 250. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the NFL sees that and it's a little bit different and I'm just not seeing them correctly. But I see what you're saying. It makes sense to me because, like, hey, what more is Tuioti going to do next year? Not a ton. Like we're kind of seeing the polished version of him. Mateo, it's a long way to go to see the final version. We hope because of what he has kind of in that unlocked bit. So I do agree with you, Owen, that if I was going to pray anyone came out, it would be Tuioti because, hey, go to the league, get paid, and kind of get your pro career started. Seeing as it's not like we're going to be talking about him as a top 100 pick next year.
Right, exactly. Also, okay. Jim, for you in the comments, I'm not that easy, okay? Just when I see Mac on a player doesn't mean I'm going to love him. But it does help.
No, I said like. I never said love. I said like. You're going to like him because he's in the Mac. You're not necessarily – that has nothing to do with his ability to play. You're just going to like at least watching him because he's in the Mac.
That's fair.
I'm pretty sure Red Murdoch's got like a top 5 ranking on Owen's board, so.
No, that's Jim's guy now. If you guys missed the podcast yesterday – fucking sniped me. I know about 7 linebackers in his class at this point, and 2 of them are from Buffalo. And I got sniped by Jim from Red Murdoch after I drafted Anthony Hill Jr. And I was like, oh, that'd be perfect. Matchup guy, downhill dude. No.
Dude, Red Murdoch is he's the one I'm super happy you told me about over the summer because, man, has he been fun to watch.
Oh, he's awesome.
Hey, if my ability to draft a team is living in Owen's head 24 hours later. Newt, I did that right.
Now I know. I didn't realize at the time. I got to it too late. I also do like point out Jim is researching for about 3 hours a day, 7 days a week, hosting this podcast. It's just like a free stream of information.
Jim knows I'm going to like a player before I know I'm going to like a player.
Well, speaking of which, I think we've got Tim Keenan from Alabama. He's a nose tackle, as best I remember from prior scouting reports on him. But, Owen, this was your first look at Tim Keenan?
Yeah, Jim, am I going to like him?
I don't know. You tell me.
I'm going to be – this is kind of the flip of when we talked about Tuioti. I think I'm going to be the rain on the parade guy for this one because I'm not the biggest fan of Tim Keenan out of Alabama. When I was looking up – I look up their 247s to get their hometown put into my sheet.
It was Buffalo, and you're like, this guy, I love him.
No, actually, it's Birmingham, Alabama. But the 247 description from him when he was a prospect was like – he's short, fat, a little wing, like short arm span, but like can really stuff up the middle. And I'm like,
he's short. That's not he's short and he's fat. You should take this guy.
It was kind of like it was like they called him broad, and I was like, oh, that's great. So,
Oh
like,
my
all right,
god.
that's a great indication of what I'm going to be getting into right now. But like, okay. But Jim, you're not wrong. Straight up, just like that kind of guy, nose tackle. They weren't wrong. He's got 6'2", 320. Looks like a boulder out there, and can't be moved like one. Just sits in the middle of that defense, especially when he's at like the nose tackle or the zero tech, and you have to devote multiple dudes to move him out of his spot. And if he is head up on a guy, he does have some pop and power in those hands to be able to reset that line of scrimmage. So you need to send doubles at him if he's going to be head up on a guy. And if he's going to be in between, there are some plays where he shoots some gaps and gets into the backfield. I'm not going to lie. Those they snuck in there every so often. But for me, he kind of falls in that same realm as like Nazir Stackhouse did last year for us. But I kind of liked Stackhouse a bit more as like just a pure raw athlete because he can move a bit more laterally, and like I saw him chase down plays from the backside and down the field, whereas Keenan,
Packer legend Nazir Stackhouse.
I want it to be known that I was higher on Stackhouse than Newt was last year.
That
Same
is
thing
true.
with Golden.
I also want to point out he was a UDFA, so
that is fair. You were right there, but I think I'm going to take that W in the end there. But yeah, for me, Keenan is a guy kind of in that similar mold to where Newt had Stackhouse last year for me, where he's smart, can anchor down against the run, be a run stuffer up the middle. But I don't really see much when it comes to motor, especially later into games when he plays such limited snaps because they know that he's not going to be able to be out there for specific kind of down scenarios, or if he does take a high volume, he's just going to be gassed out by the time he gets to that point. So a dude who has a role, the NFL is always going to need guys that are built like this.
They're going to need short, fat guys in the middle of the defensive line,
according to 247. But yeah, he's got a body type that fits a role that's going to be on a roster, especially in like a training camp. It's just going to be on whether or not he can flash some more athleticism and maybe some better hands in pass rush lanes or some better ability to condense pockets as a pass rusher if he gets stuck out there, is whether or not he's going to stick and kind of hold as a consistently rostered player during the regular season.
That's fair.
And then fat guys win championships, right? Scott Harrison says that in the group chat all the time. So it's okay if 247 lists you as fat because fat guys win championships. I needed to be quicker on that take, but I had to let Owen finish. Where are you?
You could be like me and interrupt him like 5 times while he's giving his take.
Absolutely. So, Newt, where are you?
Number one, I'm going to call Tim Keenan the third thick with 3 C's since he's the third. It's a pretty similar conversation to what Owen said. I don't really disagree with a ton. I will say I take a little bit of offense. I don't know why I'm not like personally offended, but to the Nazir Stackhouse, I think the one thing about Stackhouse that drove me nuts was it almost seemed like he was lazy when he didn't win the rep off his first step. And he was just kind of like sitting there, like playing, I don't even know, like keep away. Where I think Tim Keenan will still give you a little bit. I like the effort from him. But ultimately at the end of the day, he is a zero tech, which obviously I love. But I think that he isn't one that really flashes a lot, and he kind of pigeonholes himself into those early downs. You don't want him as a pass rusher because you're not going to get, and it's not even that like as a one tech or a zero tech, you don't have to shoot a gap and blow up the pocket. I've never expected that from a guy that is going to play in that central defensive tackle, nose tackle spot. What I want you to do is get a little bit of push and put that pressure on the quarterback so they're not able to step up into the pocket. Your job there is to help out your edge rushers, make it challenging for a quarterback when that pocket does start to collapse from the sides, that they don't have anywhere to go and chaos starts to ensue. I think Tim Keenan has a little bit more of an opportunity to do that, but the problem is it's really not much and it's very inconsistent. And I think Owen hit it with like when the flashes are there, because I do like the first step. I think it's pretty good, and I got the opportunity sometimes to beat a center to the side, whichever way it is, because he does play a lot of 2-gapping nose tech, but it's just not anything that's consistent. He's not standing out in his ability to, continuously push and collapse that pocket from the middle. And he's ultimately going to, I believe, have a spot on an NFL roster. I think I'm a little bit higher. I don't think he's going to, ping back and forth as much because I think that the career trajectory for him is going to be that rotational defensive lineman. I think that every team needs one. Every team might even need two, where you get a guy that's just able to play and be that big physical presence in the middle of the field. I, though, have him as a middle of day 3 prospect. I think that with him, while I like some of the aspects of his game, I don't think he's anything special in terms of like that wow factor for some of those characteristics.
Yeah, I think something I've really kind of started focusing on, especially this cycle, when doing this podcast, where we're covering these D tackles week to week to week to week. When you're a nose tackle, if you're not going to be the guy like a Dominic Orange, at least last year he was this, to shoot off the ball and win as a pass rusher, you need to have gravity to open up other guys around you because you're just that large and that powerful. Like, that's what I really like about Chris McClellan, was that he wasn't a good pass rusher with his hands and being able to beat blocks one-on-one, but he's such an overwhelming physical force that you have to send the double there anyway, and now you're freeing up your quicker 3-tech, your edges are getting one-on-one, and they're not getting any guard help over there because even though you're not a great pass rushing player, you have to draw that gravity specifically. So you don't have to be a guy that has 10 sacks, but you need to have some kind of impact on that pocket in general. Yep. Also, just to read Tim Keenan's 247 thing I was talking about earlier, it's 2 lines. Wide, stout defensive tackle with limited height and length. Conditioning and body structure will be a focus at the collegiate level. Predictably hard to move.
There's a girl that called me stout my freshman year of college. I called her a bitch and I just walked away and never talked to her again.
Wow.
Nuke got scout talked into being called fat.
Yeah.
We will have another podcast on like April Fool's Day or something about just college stories.
Oh man, no, we really don't need to have that podcast. That doesn't need to go out to the internet.
So Zane Durant from Penn State, 6'1", 287. Newt, is that the height weight that you have?
6'1", 290 spring measurements. So give him an extra 3 pounds. This kid had a cheeseburger and some chicken wings on the day that he weighed in.
Yeah. So what else did you have on Zane Durant?
So just to kind of fill out the rest of the measurables, he comes in with 32 and an 1/8 inch arms. Where at 6'1", I really don't hate that. He's a smaller player. He's not going to have that 33-inch mark that we love to see. But as a defensive tackle, you don't have to hit that mark necessarily. He's got some big hands too, 10.5-inch hands. I don't know why. I always just like to see some big meat hooks on my defensive linemen. I'm never going to scout it and say, man, this guy's got tiny hands. I don't think I can draft him. But there's just like a little extra comfort when you see a double-digit hand size where you're like, yeah, this guy can kind of rip a guy off to the side. I don't know. That's just maybe that's just me. Admittedly, I'm always going to be a sucker for an athlete, and I think Zane Durant is going to showcase that as a defensive tackle. You know, the height and weight are not great, and I do ding him for that. The length makes up for it a little bit, though. And I think that when I take a look at him, he's going to be a guy that he plays to pretty much his weight class. He struggles with play strength, and there's just no way about it. He's going to get typically outpowered by any interior offensive lineman that he's going to see. Hell, even Logan Jones is going to be bigger than him. And you never want that to be the case as defensive tackle. So with it, he plays to that weight class. He is gonna, if an offensive lineman gets hands on him, he's going to be easily displaced, which is something that I really hate to see, especially when we look at, man blocking schemes and the amount of length and strength that NFL interior offensive linemen have. So that's kind of where my reservation is about him, is the size and the power profile that comes from it. Aside from that, man, this guy's got the first step quickness that you rarely see from a defensive tackle. And he's going to play maybe a little bit of 4-eye, but he played a lot of 3-tech for Penn State. And shit, he even lined up as a 1-tech a decent handful of times. Not like he was like their true nose tackle or shade nose, but like he will play truly between the tackles, that A and B gap. I liked what he was able to do. I think that when you put that athleticism, that speed, with a really good work ethic and an understanding of how to be an interior presence as a defensive lineman, you get someone that is going to be able to be disruptive in terms of their need for a running back or that second offensive lineman to come over and help out with him, just because he's going to be able to get to the shoulder of whatever guard or center that he's lined up against. So I think the presence that he gives for a interior defensive lineman is going to elevate his stock, because he is so dangerous with that pass rush, with that first step, and he does warrant the things that you see. Now, I wish the production was a little bit better this year. You know, I see and I say all those things about his ability to be a dangerous pass rusher. He did not convert that into a ton of production. Not something that I love necessarily. The true pass rush win percentage was okay, but I really need to see those things continue to grow. And then the last thing I'll mention about him is the missed tackle rate has been better this year, but it was like piss poor before this. Like, I think his career missed tackle is over 20%. But he's done a lot to make some strides for that, which is something that I appreciate and I really like. So Zane Durant, a guy that I have as my number 10 defensive tackle currently. And I think it's because of, as Owen like loses his mind over this, I think it's because of those athletic traits that he brings.
I guess I'm the Grinch this episode, huh?
Yeah, I've been the asshole the last couple. I had to trade it with you.
That's fair. Also, I got really upset with you when you brought up the meat hooks line and you didn't decide to slide in the big meaty claws from SpongeBob reference.
That's fair. That was a missed opportunity on my part.
But yeah, so Zane Durant, a guy that I don't know what to do with him, because he's super twitchy. Love that burst ability, and you're right. So he had 20% missed tackle rate the last 2 seasons, and then now he's at 9%.
Yep.
Definitely improved there. And I'm not gonna lie, my favorite reps of him when he was out wide as like a defensive end or like an edge rusher. Like, I loved some of those reps where he was able to get into dudes and still throw around a little bit of weight there. And there were plays where he flashed with shooting gaps and making plays behind the line of scrimmage. And don't ever disrespect Shamar Stewart like that, everybody. I'm sorry, Ryan. But so for me with Durant, he's just like okay. Yeah, especially after watching the Oregon and Iowa games, which I know are like, oh, those are Oregon and Iowa. Of course, like those are NFL prospects in the middle of that off the line.
Yep.
The Oregon game especially absolutely wiped off the face of the planet by every single one of those guys on individual blocks. Like, I don't think he's one of the lowest graded players I've ever given for his core strength ability to anchor down and not get blown off the ball by guys who can just one-on-one drive you off of here. Which is why I also kind of like him more as an edge, to be honest, because he has the ability to play better in space and not have to worry about even a double team or a chip block to knock him into the space. But he does lack that length and that ability to really do damage as a true edge rushing type player. So he's kind of a tweener for me. And you can see that with like 287, 290. That's on the lower end. And Jim, I swear to all that is holy, if you mentioned the name Tonka Hemingway in your question to me about this guy, I will revolt and take over this channel myself.
I wasn't even queuing up Tonka Hemingway. I was actually going to say, oh, and I'm listening to you. How would you compare and contrast him to Michael Hoyt?
That is he's such a unique player that it's hard to really, the closest we've gotten with any discussion was Barham, because he plays off ball a lot more. If Durant was used off ball at 285 plus, I think you could maybe start having those conversations. I would need to see how he reacts in that much space. Like edge is more space than D tackle. Don't get me wrong. I think he does the best there. And I was thinking a lot about maybe a 5 tech, but again, the lack of length really kind of shows up when he is out in those areas when he doesn't have a great rep out in space more so. So I think if you're a defense that just likes, shoot a gap, and if you don't get anything for shooting the gap, you at least disrupted the play enough to bother it. But I think even like in the NFL, if he's going to be the guy that's going to give you a handful when you're trying to do like outside zone and trying to reach his outside shoulder, there's going to be so many good running backs that can cut off of him, and you're not going to be worried about him getting hands on that blocker while also attacking outside shoulder, getting off that block and making the tackle, because he just isn't that type of player. So going to need to work in a very specific role, a very specific defense, but the athletic traits are absolutely insane. So I have him. You said D tackle 10 specifically.
Yeah, he's D 10 tackle 10 for me currently. I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna watch the Oregon game because I think that I picked the Iowa game because I want to see him in run defense, and I picked the Indiana game because I want to see him going up against the NFL caliber arm.
Yes, that is fair. And the Oregon game, especially though, against like Iapani up the middle, and he got some looks against some of those tackles. That was a good one for like me, just knowing the guys who play on that offensive line, and Pregnon as well, being able to go out there and see what those type of power blocking type players can do to a guy like that. He's D tackled 18 for me. Now none of these are going to be. I'm gonna take the next week to go through and update all these grades from the guys we've watched so far, but tentatively D tackle 18 around the same where I have like Bear Alexander from Oregon.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I'm going to take a look at him again. And because I want to see, because the anchor, I think, is the biggest thing. I didn't see like necessarily him just getting blown off. And if, you mentioned with an Oregon offensive line, that's going to be something where I definitely want to see him, kind of when he's exposed the most. So totally fair with that. And that's like probably the one thing I just didn't see that I'm going to take a look at.
Yeah, the Iowa game was definitely a better one for his anchor. But the Oregon one was definitely where I saw the biggest like glaring weakness for it.
That's fair. Yeah.
Okay. Next player, Xavier Harris from Ole Miss. The height is not a typo. That is 6'8", 330. This is a player that will not be on every team's board. He has some off-field issues that are, I would say, moderately serious.
They're significant. They're significant.
Okay, yeah. So, Newt, go ahead and take it from here.
Yeah, let's start with the off-field issues because it's going to be something, as Jim alluded to, with him. It's going to be probably an early talking point for him. He's got a 2023 arrest for a DUI and a felony fleeing, and then he's got a 2024 arrest for domestic violence and obstructing justice. Like, those are serious charges. Now, he hasn't had any issues in the last 14 months. So this is always a question that comes up. We had this in regards to Mike Green versus David Bailey, and it's always a conversation that we have. Am I excusing any behavior like that? Absolutely not. But if I'm looking from the lens of a NFL team or of a scout, the further you can get away from something, the better I feel about it, at least in terms of, how are you going to be number one in our system, in our program as an NFL organization. And then number two, how worried am I about, this becoming a pattern? So the fact that they are starting to become, events that we're talking about relatively in the past is good for him. However, there are things that you have to have an understanding and like, hey, these are two serious incidents that are going to probably for sure be in every NFL interview that he goes through. And then secondly, might not even get him through the door for certain NFL interviews. That aside, him as strictly a prospect and as a player, The thing about him is going to be what Jim said. It is the size of him. I've got him a little bit shorter than that. I got him at 6'7" and an eighth. It doesn't matter. He's freaking huge. And the size is going to be something where you take a look at him when he does come in with that frame. He's going to be able to play a brand of football that is what is unattainable by other players. The strength that he brings with that is something that is going to be what allows him to kind of be that eater and that feaster in the middle of the field. He's got a missed tackle rate that makes me comfortable. Like, hey, you're not going to be able to create this, presence and then just blow it away. I like what he's able to do with that and with being fairly consistent, not like amazing, but he's fairly consistent with that. The run defense is going to be a huge benefactor of that. The length and his ability to just stack and shed. He's able to keep his chest clean because he's able to have that length. He understands how to get into the chest of an offensive lineman. He's stronger than most offensive linemen that he's going to go up against, and he's able to just move him to the side, get to a run defender. The issue that I have with him is going to be something that I have with any guy of this size, unless you're a freaky athlete. And it's going to be that he's an underwhelming athlete. He lumbers off the line. He does not have good explosion. The pass rush plan is going to be affected by that. And if that is the case, he needs to be a technician. He's not a technician. He's a guy that's going to push and push and push. And if he can overwhelm the guy that's across the line of scrimmage from him, phenomenal. He's going to be able to win that rep. If not, he's really not going to make an impact. He's not going to be a pocket pusher. He's got this and I don't know if you had to see it. He does it 5 times a game. It feels like this really weird, slow spin where when he wants to change direction, he takes and instead of turning, he'll just do this awkward, slow spin. It's not even a pass rush move. It's the run's going the other way. Let me hit this weird spin to go and change my angle of attack. And it's just, it's odd to me. It feels kind of lazy, but I don't know. Maybe it is more efficient than him, trying to chop and move his feet and change his direction. But ultimately I see a guy that's going to be a higher floor run defender. He's going to have a body type that's unique. Some NFL teams will really like that length and that strength profile. He's going to be more than just your zero tech. He can play really anywhere between the tackles and be a little bit of a menace. So I've got him with a mid day 3 grade. That's not looking at the character issues at all. That's strictly based on the film.
Yeah, I think
for you.
The only comment I have about his character issues, because Newt did a great job covering it, was that just ensures that he's going to be a Baltimore Raven next season. So
I had Cincinnati Bengal on my bingo card.
Oh man, dude, Ryan's gonna revolt. He's gonna lose his mind.
Something about those NFC North teams or AFC North teams and taking
I was gonna say, can we NFC North? What are we doing here? I'm catching strays.
You take those Georgia Bulldogs that punch refs.
What's that?
I said if he stops the run, Jerry Jones will take him.
That's true.
Didn't Quay Walker punch a ref in the middle of the game?
We don't talk about that. He didn't punch a ref. Number one, he did not punch. I want to clear the air for Quay Walker because that was his rookie season. He caught a lot of flack for that. He pulled and pushed a athletic trainer from the Detroit Lions in the heat of the moment, and then was ejected from the game. Which I felt really bad for the guy because he actually was just caught up in it. You could see him walking down the tunnel. He didn't punch a ref though. Let's clear the air for Quay Walker. I do not appreciate the slander.
All right, that's fair. But other than that, Xavier Harris is a player that for me, kind of similar to what we talked about earlier with some of these other guys that are super athletes, even Anthony Smith, where it's not a super athlete, but he has that one dominant trait where Xavier Harris, whether he's 6'8" or 6'7", there's some
pause. It was day 67 at my daughter's school today. And so it was 6-7 day. And she comes home wearing a 6-7 hat and everything.
Oh, Jesus.
And I'm like, man, this is just, this is something 2025 at its peak.
What does a 6-7 day even look like?
It's just day 67. It's day 67 of the school year.
That's fair.
They just walk around like this
I'm trying to
whole
think
day.
what they.
Well, I was trying to figure out because it's not the 6th day of the week; it's the 7th day of the week. I was trying to figure out what that was.
It's the 67th day of the school year. Yeah, it's just you just walk around all day like this.
How old's your daughter?
She's 6 or 7. she's actually 6. She's actually 6.
But yeah, for Harris, the couple reps he has that he wins as like a pass rusher, where his pushing does work, where he just has the longer arms and like he can flat back some dudes. Like there are plays where you're like, wow, there's that 6'8", 6'7", 330 pound frame. I'm not going to keep doing it. I'm going to power through it. And it's like, okay, that shows up. And like I knew it was saying in run defense too, it's like, okay, that shows up because he's just this massive human being, even though he plays with kind of a crap pad level. Because he is so tall and so inflexible in his stance, it's like, okay, he can still be, he's still a monster in the middle. But when it comes to the pass rush, and even sometimes in the run defense, I feel like he just doesn't really utilize his hands to the best ability he can. And the best exemplified by that really stupid slow motion spin he does. He has like his arm out wide, he like gestures to the crowd. It's so weird. But even like with that, like he plays patty cake with dudes in pass protection. I just like, could you imagine him trying to bull rush like Quentin Nelson in the NFL? Like he's not going to be able to do a lot of what he did in college as a pass rusher in the NFL at all. And I just couldn't imagine him coming in and at least being good with that, at least in his first year. So for me, he's a guy that has a floor for his size wise, but he I don't really love a lot of what he does skill wise in his game. Like he has a lot of flashy plays, but he's not a guy that even with the size and some of the run defense stuff that I'm going to be willing to take a shot on. And that's not even that's excluding the off field stuff. Like I could definitely see me drafted where I have him graded, which is kind of in the later day 3 range. But with the stuff that's going on the off field and with how those interviews go, I think that'll be key if he gets drafted at all.
Yeah. By the way, imagine being not an NFL scout where like you'll see it every now and then, what an offensive lineman, but imagine being an NBA scout where like, I don't know, a third of the players are 6'7" that you are talking about and having to battle through that consistently. Also, has Jerry on Tuesday's podcast ever said like, yeah, this guy comes in at 6'7", and you're like, oh, I have to be more.
I think I hit him with it before.
Oh, have you?
I think so. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I think Ryan Baer was in that territory.
Yeah, it was pretty early on.
What did he say? Did he just like look at you and say, "Hey, Jim, I'm not podcasting with this guy anymore"? Or how did that conversation go?
I don't remember how it went, but Jerry continued with at least 7 or 8 more podcasts. So
That's true.
I think he was vaguely into it. I'm going to take that as my win.
Okay. So now we're going to finish, I believe, with what I'm going to call a few premier defensive tackles.
You can call him premier. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. Caden McDonald from Ohio State is getting some round 1 love. Newt, is he getting round 1 love from you?
He doesn't have a round 1 grade for me. He's got a round 2 grade for me. I don't think he'll be a top 32 player for me at any point. However, that doesn't mean I don't see him in that conversation for other people. I understand where they're coming from. For me, he really feels kind of similar to Tyleik Williams, where we have a guy that is so incredibly dominant in run defense, and he's a human wall in the middle of that defensive line, but he does not offer anything in terms of pass rush. And this might be something where, we start to go back and say, and take a look, I should say, at like Tim Keenan III, because that's not a bad comparison, where it's like, hey, high floor run defender, low ceiling pass rusher. The difference is Caden McDonald, when he is asked to do anything in run defense, he is going to be someone that offensive lines are planning around and almost certainly going to send a double team his way. And he's still going to hold up against that double team. He makes it challenging in order for run games to be able to play anything that is in that A gap. And they have to be able to account for what block scheme they have on him. The anchor on him, I think, is probably one of the most impressive parts of his game. He's just so challenging to move. He's stout. He's got an ideal build for a one tech, and he has an understanding for run defense. His eyes are going to be able to play the counter. He's able to get and see into the backfield. He's not going to be a gap shooter. He's not going to be a guy that is going to blow up plays in the backfield or, be this really, really exciting tackle for a loss guy, but he's going to be able to hold his ground. He's understands exactly how to shed blocks. He's going to get off and he's going to make the tackle 9 times out of 10. And it's going to be exactly what you want on early downs where you're limiting them to basically 0 or 1 yards. But the issue with me that keeps him out of my first round conversation is the pass rush. He's not going to be that pocket pusher. He's not going to be a guy because of that lack of, I don't want to say explosiveness because he does have a good first step. It's just like the play speed and the athleticism that comes after that. I think that makes it challenging for him to be an imposing pass rusher. I've seen him in one-on-one pass reps, and that's where I really want him to shine with that power profile that he has, and it just doesn't. And I think there's a little bit of a lack of athleticism from him, but what he lacks in that he makes up for in that stout anchor and his ability to just be a dominant run defender.
Yeah, I think McDonald. I think the only player I've been higher on this entire podcast than Newt was Tuoti, because he's just McDonald for me. I have him in the third round grade. He's right there with like Dante Corleone, grade wise. McDonald is the textbook. Put it into the book itself of how to be stand your ground, run defending, just absolute dominant presence of one tech. Be able to use your hands to set up blocks, absorb contact through your core strength, drop to one knee, be able to not move off your spot. I do think he has some nice twitch, and he had some gap shooting plays in there. It's not something he's going to do consistently, but unlike a guy like Tyleik Williams that you compared him to, Newt, I don't think Tyleik was a lot of finesse, and he wasn't a great pass rusher per se, but he would throw a ton of stuff at you, and Caden McDonald, you remove the pass rush out of there, bam, non-factor. I hope someone got my very niche Stone Cold Steve Austin wrestling reference there.
Bill Sparks is somewhere laughing at it.
Yeah, apparently nobody watched WrestleMania 18, but so besides that, he's just not able to get much push at all. Like I said, if you're going to be a nose tackle, you need to generate. If you're not going to generate actual pressure by being able to beat a guy one-on-one, you need to be able to generate that kind of gravity and pull to you to generate or to bring in those double teams to collapse that pocket. And I just didn't see that as consistently with McDonald as I saw with some of the other one techs. I do think he is the best run defending one tech in this class, and probably one of the best, if not the best, run defender overall in the class when it comes to being a one tech player or a defensive tackle player in general. So I do think his stock is buoyed by that, and I do think he has some untapped potential with his athleticism. It's just right now, if you bring him in, don't expect him to have insane sack numbers. I think asking for 2.5, 3 his rookie year is asking too much of him immediately, just because I think it's very, very, very low on him as an immediate impact pass rusher player in the middle of your defense. You need to have a gaping hole in your run defense and maybe an aging one tech that maybe perhaps has fallen off in the past few seasons that is you're looking to replace to open up your really twitchy 3-tech player. Don't know what team I could be talking about in this specific, but adding him as a player to then fix that gaping hole on your defensive front is where you're going to get a lot of stock and where you might be able to see him get moved up to the first round. But just looking at him as a prospect in isolation, I can't really find a lot that I'm jumping on my seat excited for.
Where would you put him in terms of when you talk about the guys that can not necessarily are solely nose tackles, but the guys that can play one tech and not he could play at the pinch? like legitimately could play it, where would you put him in terms of those guys?
Based off of my current grades, and again, it's going to be balanced based off of how they are as pass rushers and how they are as run defenders.
Right.
He's number 3
Okay.
in nose tackles behind Orange and behind Dante Corleone, just by a smidge.
Okay.
Just because I think those other two guys can definitely impact the pass rush more than he can, or has other elements of his game that he still has to polish up.
Would you put Washington in that conversation for one text, or is he in front of Washington?
He's Washington will be in front of him,
Okay.
but I think he's in the same conversation as like Peter Woods. Is like, okay, can they play one tech? Yes, but like, would I want to? No.
Okay, that's fair. I would say I have him slightly ahead of, not slightly. I have him like kind of. It's not like a wide margin, but I have McDonald one spot ahead of Orange, and then I know we're kind of like light years apart on Corleone. So I won't even bring up how far he is. But as I detract back, I think that so McDonald for like a true one tech would probably be my top. But he's right there with Orange. And honestly, like, man, if Orange could do anything that resembled his 2024 film, I'd be like, yes, let's go. It's just so concerning.
Yep.
And we don't have to rehash that again, but he'd probably be my top one tech then.
So, Owen, how do you compare Caden McDonald to T'Vondre Sweat?
T'Vondre Sweat, when I watched him coming out of Texas, he was massive. And the fact that he could clog up the middle was, you were kind of get it. You expected that because of his size. With him, he was interesting because they would also put him as like a defensive end and have him stunt inside. He was a rare athlete for that size.
Yeah.
And he would impact the game because of that. But I feel like McDonald is a bit more functional when it comes to the IQ and the hand usage against run defense than Sweat was, whereas Sweat was just a dominant size to athlete ratio. So McDonald, like I said, I don't feel like he has some good athletic pop, but I don't see it like exploding off the screen like a guy like T'Vondre Sweat was. McDonald is just like that solid middle of the defensive line. You're not running past this guy. If you have a hole at defensive tackle for run defense, this is your guy to go with.
Yeah, I want to build on that because I think that Owen said it really well. Caden McDonald he's going to play. It's not a sexy brand of football that Caden McDonald plays at all because he doesn't give you that excitement that T'Vondre Sweat brought with you. He is going to be a player that he's going to go in. He's going to do his job. He's going to do it really, really well. And, he might have a little bit more upside than we've seen right now at pass rush. Like, mind you, he's really only played 1 year of college football. Like, he has been a really deep rotational player in Ohio State's system. So there is that, but he's a guy that, he's going to come in, he's going to do his job, and he's going to do it really well. Where T'Vondre Sweat, on the other hand, we're talking about these guys Tim Keenan being thick with 3 C's. T'Vondre Sweat was thick with 8 C's. Dude was big. But as Owen said, the athleticism that he had that Caden McDonald doesn't have, it was insane that T'Vondre Sweat could move the way he did at that size when he's sniffing 400 pounds, in all honesty. But with that, he's able to just do those things at that weight and be really, really freaky, where he doesn't have to kind of do the nitty gritty work that another player like a Caden McDonald would have to do. So I think that with it, you get a guy that, with his God-given gifts in T'Vondre Sweat, is so incredibly, unique. And I'm not taking anything away from what T'Vondre Sweat is as a player, because he's a fun player and he's a really great player for what he is. But I think that Caden McDonald really, really works at his game, and you've been able to see it in the way that he's come up through the Ohio State system.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the last player we're covering, Caleb Banks from Florida. If you are not familiar with Caleb Banks, in the summer, he was in contention for defensive tackle 1. I know Clint Goss had Banks as defensive tackle 1 in the summer. Clint was not alone in his opinion. Caleb Banks got injured, played a game, sat out most of the year, just came back, and I think he played last week. I also think he's accepted a Senior Bowl invite.
Yep. He's accepted a Senior Bowl invite. He's played 3 total games this year.
Yep. I can see that you were waving something at the screen, but it just
three.
The
Sorry.
screen's only like so big right now.
Yeah.
So Newt, take it on Caleb Banks now.
Caleb Banks. I am so glad that he decided to move forward and come out. And I know it was extremely unfortunate with his injury and playing in already what was his redshirt senior season. And I know that there's a lot of conversation on at that time. I think he had only played against LSU, so he had 1 game under his belt. There was a very clear path to him to take a medical redshirt. He comes back. He plays in the final 2 Florida games where it's very clear that they're not going to get really to the point where he's making I didn't even make a bowl game, did they? They finished under 500, right?
I believe so. Yeah.
I think Florida State beat them to keep them out of bowl contention. So maybe he comes back to try to get them to a bowl game. But ultimately, it's something where he doesn't necessarily need to, and he can kind of hang it up and go throughout the pre-draft process, a la Jermod McCoy. I'm not saying anything negative about that thought process, but he comes back and man, he plays his ass off for that Tennessee game and that Florida State game. And if you got a chance to look at him from the 2024 film, he is a top defensive tackle recruit for the reason of the number one size that he brings to that defensive tackle position at 6'6", at 330 pounds. On top of that, he's got more than 35-inch arms, and he does hit the meat hook mark of 10-inch hands. But he is a massive human being. He plays 4-eye. Realistically, for Florida, he plays 4-eye. He plays a 3-4 defensive end. That's what he's asked to play. At that size, it makes a ton of sense why he plays that. I'd love to see him continue in the NFL in a system like that because I think it's going to set him up the best. But what makes him such a unique defender is the twitch. It's the first step quickness. I don't think I've seen a defensive tackle since I've been scouting that has had the first step quickness like I have seen out of Caleb Banks. It is insane the way that he is able to move off the snap, get into the backfield of the offense, and absolutely wreak havoc. The lateral movement on top of that is going to be something where when he's asked to shoot a gap and it's not right in front of him, he's able to move to it and he's able to plug that gap and even get into the backfield. So we go from the conversation of, what's the role of a one tech, where we're looking at a guy that is holding that position, that is able to eat up a couple of offensive linemen and let the rest of the defensive line feast, where Caleb Banks with a 4-eye, you really want to see him being the one that's feasting. And even if he's, in a situation where he's double teamed, he's able to take advantage of that. And that first step quickness is going to be allowing him to put immediate pressure on the quarterback. It's going to put him in the face of the running back. And it's something like I rarely see with that. Now, I have him right now with a first round grade. I don't have him as my top defensive tackle. I still have Peter Woods there. And he's like kind of that, I don't want to say a fringe first round grade because he is a first round grade, but I'd love to see him, especially with that length, be a little bit better at stacking and shedding. I don't think that when he's asked to hit in defending an outside zone run, for instance, that he is the best at getting off a block. And with 35-inch arms, I need to see you better with that. With, 330 pounds of weight playing a 4-eye, you're going to match up just fine with any offensive tackle. You need to be able to maximize those physical tools and get off those blocks and be better with that. I think the hand technique needs to improve. I was really hoping to see that this year come along with him. He didn't get the opportunity to, so that's something I'm continuing to look forward to next year. And then the tackle rate is absolutely atrocious. It's like a 50% missed tackle rate this year, which it's 3 games, but it's still terrible. It's like over 20% in his career. There were a couple of snaps in, I think, the LSU game that I watched from this year where, once again, first step quickness, he completely blows by the guard, and he is 2 yards behind the limit of scrimmage, chopping his feet, ready to tackle the running back, and completely whiffs. And it's like what was about to be an amazing play resulted in a 6-yard gain for the offense because you couldn't make the play in the backfield. That probably is the most frustrating part for me, especially given the kind of athlete he is at that size.
So, Owen, what were your thoughts on Caleb Banks since you've seen him from the summer?
Yeah, so respectfully to all the draft professors out there, as respectfully as I can possibly say it, I don't think there was any earthly realm he was in contention for D-Tackle 1 over Peter Woods. Like, coming off of last year in the summer, the film I watched of Peter Woods and the film I watched of Caleb Banks, while I'm in lockstep with Newt, that like rare twitch for a guy that size and ability to move and length and all the intangibles. But watching that and also watching the rare athleticism you got from Peter Woods, you can watch us talk about him from a few episodes ago. Him also having a rare twitch, but also being able to put together the technique we saw last year.
That's the difference.
Where Banks is even now, I think was what held him way above. And even to this point, Banks is my D-Tackle 2, and I have a high second round grade on him.
Okay.
I had coming into this tonight's podcast. Before I watched him a second time in those last 2 games he played, because I even watched the LSU game earlier, I still had him like 4th round grade, super athlete, but super like I didn't see his impact as greatly as I saw some other guys who moved to that athleticism. I think going back and rewatching some of the games I watched and putting a little more oomph into some of the plays he made, and then also watching the 2 games, which I think he played really well in against Tennessee and against Florida State, which Tennessee has offensive line players that I did like Wendell Moore Jr. is a player for them that I'm a big fan of, and he was out there making plays against him. So he showed me, he showed me a lot of stuff that I feel like I was missing in the past. So he is up to my D-Tackle 2 spot now, but he's still a guy that, like Newt said, kind of missed tackles is what plays his run defense. But I also just think he doesn't really use his hands, or he doesn't maximize the athletic and length and strength combination he has. He should be this elite dominant run defender, and as well an elite dominant pass rusher because of those traits. It's just like the reason he's not is evident. You can kind of isolate that because of that. So he's got a lot of room to grow. If I'm going to be taking a guy, I'm like, okay, yeah, cool. Yeah, I'm going to take him, and I can definitely think I can drag those traits out of there or coach him up out of those traits or from those traits up into that technique. So I think he's a guy that a lot of people are going to bank on, especially with draft capital.
People are going to bank on Caleb Banks, is what you're saying?
Wow.
Yes, that is exactly what I'm saying. That's gonna be his presidential slogan or his draft slogan now is bank on Caleb Banks.
I think Caleb Banks is gonna make bank in Mobile.
Oh, there
you go.
There it is.
We every draft cycle we talk about players that have a lot to gain at the Senior Bowl. I think Caleb Banks has as much to gain at the Senior Bowl as any player in recent memory, even more than the small school guys that are coming up to play against the other draftable players. Because Owen, I like that, second round grade. In Mobile, he could go from second round grade to top 10.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Like if he shows that he's healthy and he can dominate the players that are in Mobile during the practices, there's a possibility, in my opinion, that Caleb Banks can be a top 10 draft pick in this draft.
I could see it, especially if it comes out in like those one-on-one reps that we always love watching with the big uglies, where you get a chance to really isolate their pass rush plan and just go out and beat a dude one-on-one. Like that's where a lot of guys kind of flash. Like I remember that was Jermaine Johnson's battlefield where he really took over and he didn't even stay for the game. He boosted himself into first round contention off of those one-on-ones specifically. And I think Caleb Banks has the traits to be dominant there. It's going to be, okay, show me some hand moves. Show me that you've widened your bag coming into this. So I do think that's an accurate prediction if Banks is going to be the guy that comes in and has the biggest, maybe not the biggest, but the most impactful stock moving at the the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, I don't. It's not going to be the biggest because a lot of people have him. I mean, like we're not far off. High second, early first. I would say that is fairly close to consensus. There's not a ton you can move from there, but when you're moving 5, 6, 7, 8 spots in the top of the draft, that's important. When you're moving 80 spots from number
200 to 120.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like, that's awesome, but ultimately you're still a day 3 pick.
Yep.
Yeah, so the Darius Alexander jump was probably the biggest I've seen in a while from last year's Senior Bowl, where he was like, no one knew who the hell he was, and then now he's a 3rd round pick because he gets, not only is he performing insanely against high level competition, but people who didn't previously watch him watched his tape and were like, okay, cool, now he's a stud. Showed that at the Senior Bowl. Like I have the confirmation already. I can go back and kind of see that in live game film now.
Yeah, I think the best comparison, and kind of counter to what Jim had said, but similar, was like a guy like Quinyon Mitchell, where like obviously you see a player from Toledo and you have questions about him. There's already a lot of buzz around him as like top 5, top 3 cornerback, and then he just completely takes over the Senior Bowl, which vaults him into CB1 conversation. I think that's where we're talking about Caleb Banks, where we're talking about a guy that's like DT, like top 3 defensive tackle. And hey, can you come in and do the things that we know you're capable of doing? And let that plus the intangibles in terms of just the way that you're built take over your draft stock. I think that Caleb Banks has kind of an opportunity to have a similar trajectory as Quinyon Mitchell, as not a huge mover in terms of those numbers, but solidifying himself into the, I'm going to say, I'm not as bullish as you guys. I'm going to say top 20 because I think that would be a really nice mark for him. Top 10 would be rich, especially if we're talking about 2 or 3 quarterbacks in the top 10. But I don't hate it if that's going to be where this goes to, because I think Caleb Banks, like I said, with the twitch and the explosion off the line, is just unworldly.
Okay, so why don't we pause for podcaster identification? Owen, you want to let everybody know about the weekly huddle and the other content that you do?
Yep, so you can find me obviously here on Tuesdays and Wednesday nights with the Draft Professor, and I also stream them over on my channel at the same exact time. So if you're subscribed to me over on my channel, you're going to see this exact same stream at the exact same time. But other than that, over at the Weekly Huddle YouTube channel, I'm going to be posting a video soon. I talked about it a bit last night, where I'm going to be breaking down kind of where the investments are when it comes to different circumstances, and I'm going to use the Buffalo Bills. Obviously, it's my team, but they're a good case study in that they have an old defense that's underperforming because they're old, and they have an offense that's underperforming because they're not good. Where do you invest your draft capital? Where do you invest your free agency dollars? How do you more so capitalize on which side of the ball first and invest those kind of assets afterwards into the offseason? So I'm going to go into breakdown and make a video about that tomorrow morning. But you can also find other things that me just talking about prospects, talking about random football topics, doing hot takes, anything like that over at the YouTube channel there, or over at my Twitter at Weekly Huddle.
Nice.
And new.
You can find me realistically on Twitter at NFL Draft _Weston. That's going to be where I have been putting all of my clips and my thoughts on the players that we've been talking about. As we wrap this up, I'm also looking forward to getting some of my top rankings out. I just posted my edge big board for my top 15. I'll be posting the same thing for my defensive tackles once I get that final look on Zane Durant, as Owen has now convinced me to do. Beyond that, I do run zerotechdraft.com, which is where, as the draft season starts to heat up, I'll put my mock drafts, my rankings, and then articles that I write up on specific players. And then finally, I am going to be the creator for a lot of the content surrounding Cheesehead TV draft coverage and draft information throughout this draft cycle, and it's something that I have been looking forward to and am extremely excited about. That is going to start at the end of this calendar year and go all the way through this draft season. So make sure you're checking out Cheesehead TV and the content that I, as well as a couple other draft professors, Brian Maffey, and last year was Dom C. Maybe he'll be back with it again. Are putting out with their draft coverage and their draft guide.
I do want to give a shout out because Dom C was in the chat, I believe.
Yeah, Dom was in the chat. I saw him for sure.
Yeah. So Dom, let me pull up your comment if I can find it.
It was probably like Newt doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. Don't listen to this guy.
There he is. So Dom podcasts with draft professors on Mondays. So you can catch some of Dom's shows on the quarterback playlist. So Dom was helping the draft professors break down quarterbacks.
Dom's a big Jets fan, which is why he has spent the last 9 months researching quarterbacks. He knows what they eat for breakfast. He knows what time they go to bed. He knows what brand of socks Fernando Mendoza wears. So if there's anything quarterbacks, Dom knows.
Yep. So I have a question about Cheesehead TV. So is a cheesehead like any kind of Wisconsin cheese, or does it have to be Wisconsin cheddar?
A cheesehead is that's a Wisconsinite. That is someone from Wisconsin would be a cheesehead.
Okay, so like if you're from Wisconsin, you're a cheesehead. That doesn't imply that you cheer for the Green Bay Packers.
If you're from Wisconsin, why would you not cheer for the Green Bay Packers, Jim? Come on, Jim. You're asking silly questions now.
I am.
It would be a Packer fan, realistically, from Wisconsin.
Okay, so we're gonna have to work on getting me some of the like Wisconsin sharp cheddar and like what I should be trying because I am a cheese snob.
Jim, you could have rolled up through the draft last year, stopped in here north of Milwaukee, and I would have gotten you all the cheese you needed. And
I could have, but I didn't.
That's true.
So
we'll work on this. We got a lot of good cheese around here.
No, my draft story is I showed up to Detroit for round 1 of the draft, and Buffalo traded down to pick 33. So like already, like I'm traumatized for showing up to the draft. Oh, and I'm glad that made you laugh.
So bad.
I have a story about my draft party during that draft specifically.
And then
crazy.
I showed up the next day and it was Keon Coleman. People were asking. I was wearing all my Bill stuff. Like, what'd you think of the pick? And I'm like, no.
Yeah, me and my buddy were we weren't even on the call. Like the next day, I'm in bed watching round 2 start. Just got home from work, and my one buddy had Keon Coleman as like a 5th round grade. Like he hated him. And as soon as the pick comes in, it's not even on my screen yet. It hasn't updated. I'm a little behind. He calls me and I immediately know what the pick was. And I'm like, I answer it and he just is losing his mind on the phone. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah. So if this is the first time you've caught our podcast, we are here every Wednesday with Newt, Owen, and myself. Draft Professor is here at 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. Eastern. Every weeknight, Saturday mornings, 2 podcasts, and Sunday mornings as well. So we are here 7 days a week. You will see me with a few different people in the seats opposite me. You'll see Owen on the station a couple times a week, and some of the other podcasters pull double duty as well. But we are here, and we are covering the draft like no other. And we are shifting gears because I believe we have one more scouting report show. I think the other defensive line group is one more group to go. And then the rest of it is we're just moving on to whatever the draft stories of the day are as Owen, Newt, and the rest of the draft professors refine their boards.
Yeah.
So for Owen, Newt, myself, the 110 people at the Draft Professor, thank you so much for tuning in. And we will see you on a podcast again tomorrow. Thank you, everybody.